All right, Jay, I just had to cut you off because we started getting heated. No Name Podcast today. I think we're going to be talking about obviously this Trump assassination attempt, what it means for the real estate industry, what it did to the stock market, and then you kind of got slapped with a little bit of fair housing. That's actually a question that we get a ton with YouTube channels is
Mhm.
fair housing. So we'll kind of touch on that towards the end. Is fair housing help a lot of people out, but first of all, dude, you called me. I was on the way to the movies. I'm going through a hellacious storm here in Houston, hurricane, and then another storm hits us. And then you're like, frickin' Trump just got shot. And I'm like, what in the is going on, dude? First of all, what was you watched this shit live. And then we're going to talk about Trump, housing market, what all that means.
Yeah, oh yeah, I was watching it live on. There's actually this live viewing party on YouTube, and actually, I just happened to be randomly doing stuff around the house, and then I got alerted that this live viewing party was going on. It's not anything I really ever watch, but I'm like, I'll just listen to it in the background, you know. And all of a sudden, I'm like listening to it, and it just starting, and then all of a sudden, the guy's like, I heard this pop pop, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like, is that a paint? I was like, in my own mind, I was like, is that a paintball gun or like an airsoft gun? Because it didn't really sound like real bullets flying, you know. Obviously, we know now like the situation, but then the guy's like, what was that? And then he's just like, and then the guy was like, he's like, he's like, Trump just went down. He's like, did he just get shot? Dude, my heart just dropped. Dude, I grabbed my phone. I'm like looking at it, and I'm like in my mind, dude, I like kind of panicked a little bit, and I'm like, dude, we're gonna go into a civil war if he does.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, they're like, are you ready? Like this, the Secret Service, they're like ready, and then they didn't move, and then you hear like shoot her down or whatever, and then they get him up, and I'm like, dude, he's like fist pumping. I'm like, okay, like that, like calmed me down a little bit. But then I like called Rachel like three times. She was out and about, and then I couldn't get a hold of her, and then I called her mom because I like didn't know like what was gonna happen, and then finally got a hold of her, and then I called you. And dude, I was just like, holy dude, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
crazy, dude. I saw 9/11 live. I was watching it in the back room at a freaking store. I remember like my mom called me and she was just like, oh, the 9/11 or twin or the World Trade Center is being attacked. And I'm like, Mom, that's on a Biggie song. That happened back in, the 90s. And she's like, no, it's happening live. Turn it on. And I'm like, well, I'm at work. I'm like merchandising,
Yeah.
stocking the shelves. And I go in the back room, and the receiving clerk had a TV in his office, and so he like flipped it on, dude, and like we're like all huddled around the TV watching that. It was just crazy. I'm like, this is gonna be a just one of those things, that you just remember.
The I want to actually talk about now. It's been a couple days, like what we think happened, but do these affect real estate markets? And I'm just blindly asking, like these massive U.S. catastrophic events. Like, not saying the Trump it was a failed catastrophic attempt, but
Yeah.
I
Well, if
saw
you
the
look at
stock
like,
market this morning. It's rallying, and
oh
what
yeah,
did I tell you when you called me? I don't know why my mind went to it. I told you I'm like, and I'm okay. I'm not picking sides. I don't care. I'm not actually that political guy. You know this very well. I'm like, this fucker's winning now. And I went to the Vegas odds. His odds doubled instantly. And my wife's like, can I ask you why you thought that? Like, what is it? And I'm like, it's a rallying cry. I said, look at what's happening. Social media. I'm talking every celebrity, every news outlet, every human is posting about him. Like,
Mhm.
and then I was telling you before this, I went to Amazon. I'm looking up some driveway gravel grids, and I hit the search bar, and the top 10 most trending searches on Amazon are Trump flags, Trump hats, Trump everything. And I'm like, this is crazy. So does like I guess what does this mean? I think with elevated odds of him winning,
Yeah, if
and
he can make it.
if he can make it, real estate market, like what's your gut telling you right
Well,
now?
I mean, like you said, the stock market was just roaring this morning, and
Yeah.
like everything's you open up your tracker, dude, and everything's like in the green, bing, 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 bing,
Yep.
bing. I mean, it definitely it's just insane. I mean, you look at all the support that was for like people getting behind him. The records case was dropped this morning against him. The Jack Smith case that was dropped. You're gonna start to see, and he hasn't spoke live yet. And
Yeah.
I think that's on purpose to like rally up the troops at the RNC, which is happening right now. I think he's set to speak on Thursday, so he's keeping really low profile. But I mean, if the stock market goes up, interest rates go down. That's just the way it works. So I mean, naturally, it would, heat the housing market up. But if you think about like 9/11, like what followed 9/11, it was the crash, right? That's when
Right.
they like deregulated banking so that investment banks could merge with financial banks. It was called the Glass Ceiling Act, and they removed that, and boom, it caused a catastrophic, downturn of our industry. So I don't think
And the worst.
historically like those types of things like juice up the market for the long term. You just never know. Like it's all there's a lot of like levers being pulled, that
Yeah.
affect that. But if the stock market goes up, rates will go down. So yes, there will be a direct impact of the housing market in the short run.
Right. And then you wonder, yeah, like you talked about a civil war happening.
Oh yeah,
It,
dude. It was game on. It was gonna
but
happen.
with that, my initial thoughts again, and I just like asking you questions, but when COVID hit and it was in its peak, we saw like this mass migration to red states, like in my hometown of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, now quickly became the number one real estate market in the country. And they're idiots because not idiots. I'm talking about my own people, but they bitch and moan at me and blame me because my YouTube channel is the reason that everybody's moving there. But yet, what they didn't realize is during the height of these riots and just Antifa and just nasty, they were threatening to go to Coeur d'Alene and you know ruin start ruining businesses and stuff there. So and this will come up with a point here in a second, but what happened was basically all of my friends and everybody that I know everybody in that town, they lined the one main street with AR-15s and pistols and guns and said, "Come on with it."
Hmm.
It was natural propaganda that literally made every single person who is right and very far right, unfortunately, it sounds like they're a little too far right, move there, right? So with these acts like this, like you talked about a civil war, it's like, do we start to see even more like draw into certain markets, you know?
Okay, so like you were telling me the other day you were reading the book like How to Kill the Mob, and I
Yes.
downloaded that book and started listening to it.
Amazing.
But there's one out there called Barbara F. Walters, no relation to the Barbara Walters we all know, but it's called How Civil Wars Start and How to Stop Them.
Mm,
And it's a book like basically she researched every civil war. And she said that the one thing that they all had in common was that no one ever saw it coming. So like when you see like an event like that, like
yep.
when anything happens on the right side or whatever, like they never riot anything. Like the right's boiling point is like pretty high, right? And usually they're busy doing other things, business, work, family, all the things, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not really worried about the stuff in the bottom feeders are like trying to rally into.
Oh, that's
So
interesting to think about.
uh
Hmm.
yeah, I mean that's my theory on it.
Yeah.
And that's like also they're also the right side is very ingrained in like traditional, you're starting to see a lot more people pop into the space that have like more social media influence that like are into digital and social technology. But like this is like even how like Ben Shapiro with the Daily Wire got started and got so big so quick. He tried to start digital and social media marketing for conservative side. They didn't want to listen to him. So then he started his own company. The list goes on. But I literally like in my own mind, I thought to myself, like when I saw that, I was like, I would never, I couldn't be anywhere safer at this moment because one, who's going to invade this area for one,
Right.
but two, everyone here is like, fire powered up, and it's not going to be the hotbed. And
Yep.
who even knows what a true like we think of like muskets and hand to hand combat and all this stuff with Civil War. I mean, this like if you watch like what modern day Civil War would look like, it would be like massive government assassinations, tons of technology attacks, power outages, things like that.
Yeah.
Like, would there be people in the streets doing things? I mean, if this was on the other side, like I could imagine it would
Right.
have been a riot central, dude.
Yeah.
There was Antifa in Portland. I saw our old boy
Eric.
Eric posting on it.
I thought that was like from the past or something, but that was current.
I think that was from the other night. Yeah.
Wow. It is scary. And then what's your thoughts? Like now we're what 2 days past it, I think.
Yep.
Now there's all the theories out there that this was planned
Oh yeah, I
to
saw that, dude.
to boost it. And again, I don't ever want to like, dude, I'm a middle of the fence guy. I actually want to play devil's advocate and say both sides, but it finally started kind of ticking me off because I was like, they're not going to go out there and just smoke this 20-year-old in the head. Like, and I don't know. I watched the videos a lot, and the one that caught my attention the most was the two snipers on the roof, right?
Mhm.
Oh, the Secret Service botched this. They botched. Look at the two shooters, man. They weren't shooting. And I watched that shooter over and over and over. The two snipers.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm formulating my own opinion of like what I saw. And I had multiple families in my house because Hurricane Barrel, and there's some that probably lean left, some right, whatever. And so it instantly turns into like this conspiracy theory. And I stopped everybody. I'm like, I don't think it is, guys. Like, I'm an avid hunter. I hunted my whole life. And I would sit outside on a ridge. I would hike miles, sit on a ridge, and I would watch multiple ridges from 200 to 800 yards away, right?
Yep. Ditto.
And you're hoping that an elk comes out at a certain spot, right? And you're prepared for it all days. You got your yardages, you got your windages. Like this shit they're doing on this is what I did, and I did it for years, and I did it every day, right? And all
Yep.
of a sudden, this fucking elk comes out at 427 yards in a spot you would never in a million years. And guess what? He's sitting there feeding. He could have been out there for 5 minutes. I didn't know that, right?
Yep.
Because you're landscaping, you're looking at so much. And so I'm watching this guy, and this is not, I haven't heard anybody talk about this or anything. It's just my opinion. And if you notice him, he's looking in his scope, and
Yep.
then he pops his head up.
Yeah, he
And
pulls
then
off
all
the
of a sudden, the guy
gun.
next to him shoots, and it startles him. And I'm like, guys, this is not planned. Oh, well, why didn't he shoot? I'm all, dude, okay, now you have this elk out at like 200 yards, 400 yards, whatever. This guy was 150. You're in your scope and you're trying to find him. So in his ear, he's probably like, fucking shooter, 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 right? Now he's freaking out. He's trying to find him and he can't. So your natural reaction as
Exactly.
a hunter is you actually lift your head up above your scope, you find him with your eyes, and you bring the scope to the target. Like that's how you're
Yep.
trained. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was seeing this dude do. And so I started explaining that, and I'm like, that's what. And now you think about a roof that's slanted away from you, and all you can basically see is probably the top of his head. This is like an 8-inch target at 150 yard, and you can't find it in a zeroed in scope, right? So I'm like,
hmm
I don't know, man.
Well, okay. So when I saw that happen, so what I thought happened is I thought, after going to all the
Yeah,
gun trainings and all that, I literally thought this almost the exact same thing, but I thought that he heard the first shot and came
yeah,
off of his gun to see because he was like so zeroed in. So Eric Prince, the former owner of Blackwater,
hmm
wrote a big post on this. And the Secret Service is now saying that if you looked at the grid that they showed, it actually there was like a giant circle with like an arrowed in around that building for some reason. So they said that was their perimeter.
yeah,
And then that was like stage one security. Stage two was like 100 to like 300 yards. And then there was like stage three, which was like 300 to 1,000 out. But they said that those snipers is where I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense because they're like, the snipers are now like at 300 to 1,000 yards out. So that guy basically, like what you said, is like crawled under the line of
yeah,
sight. And he was like, if you look the videos, because there's videos coming out of him crawling up the roof, like he's on his belly. I mean, he pops up a couple of times, but he's like inching his way up. So I thought that sniper heard the shot and got like couldn't figure out where it was coming from, and then got
yep.
back on his gun.
You could
Um,
have been looking 90 degrees off to the left, and now you got to zero in. And then you realize it's all like on the shoulders of the Secret Service, but you do realize it's not just Secret Service. There's local police officers there, and like there could be a 58-year-old donut eating cop kind of hanging out right there, and he let the guy go. But you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of factors. But anyways, I
yep.
don't think we need to pick a side on it, but it does draw a lot of speculation of like shit, what's gonna happen now going
They,
forward?
they they said the sniper that took him out was at 500 yards,
Yeah, it wasn't even the two that were
448. Yeah.
yep. And he probably had a better angle. It's crazy. Those two dudes there may not have even been able to see him on that slanted roof. So crazy stuff.
Yeah, because
But
if you look at the actual pictures of it, it's
yeah.
literally like it's not straight out in front of him either. It's literally like almost directly off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And like now you're seeing those pictures come out and like seeing it in slow motion of him like barely cranking his head as that bullet goes off, dude.
Yep. It's
I don't know,
crazy.
man. And people saying that it's fake and stage and all this and that, dude. And like, oh, I saw these videos are like, I'm from the hood, I know what gunshots sound like. I'm like, dude, if I have a
And they
fully
point their barrel
suppressed AR,
sideways
which
and they
I
can't hit
do,
shit from 10 feet away.
exactly, dude. Well, like Eric Prince said that he's very lucky that that shooter was inexperienced and didn't account for the 5 mile an hour winds and the
Yep.
drop in velocity. And that was my thought too. I'm like, this guy, one, was probably not practicing shooting downhill. Two, he probably wasn't shooting at an
And his
angle. And three, he
heart
wasn't
is
shooting in the wind.
thumping.
Oh yeah. Well, they said so. There was rumors too that the cops went up on the roof. A cop went up on the roof, and the guy pointed the like, the guy pointed the gun at him and the cop, and then he cranked off the rounds, but who knows if that's true.
Right. Yeah, there's a
I don't
lot
know,
that
but
goes
if,
into that shot because, like, as an avid hunter, again, they call it buck fever. So when
oh
you
yeah,
get
dude.
hair in the crosshairs, you start shaking and you can pull and flinch too. And so there's a lot. That kid was probably not holding his breath, not.
I was
There's a lot of
like,
factors. I'll tell
from
you
his
what.
angle and it going a little left, I told Rachel, I go, it's either the wind or he's left-handed and he pulled that shot on the
That or
draw, like
yeah,
on the.
that or just it's a quick like it's a flinch.
Mhm.
Triggers have different weights to them,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's why like really experienced shooters. Now we're talking about guns. This is like kind of my thing, but you can make a really light trigger so it goes off almost surprisingly, and the heavier it gets, you can tug that thing. But barely missed him, man.
I've got
That
the
could just be a win thing, man, for real
I've
at
got the two I've
150.
got the two stages on everything. So
Yep. But um crazy enough, we haven't seen anything like yesterday, today, tomorrow that's like a real estate market shift. I don't know if we truly will. It'll be more of like if he gets elected. I want to ask you something too. I haven't even got to talk to you. There's all these talks about interest rates.
like I said, if the stock market goes up, the interest rates will come down. So that's just
Yeah,
like
but
a
the stock market's been like flying lately. Like it's in one of the most bullish runs.
well, that's
It should, and I get it, but it's holding steady. But there's so much talk now. Like when I listen to the stock market and those people talk of interest rates coming down, inflation not seeming, you know, as strong anymore. So they do seem to be coming down, or their talks of lowering that rate.
yeah. I mean, it's always like on a drop off. Supposedly like before the election, like a 0.5%. But like I always keep saying, it's like, what is it, a 0.5% off of the all-time high?
Right.
So that's really what you have to look at. So when they're really the one, because people are always like, well, what do you look at? What do you look at? Well, you have to look at the 10-year treasury. Like that's where you look and see what's going on with the rates.
So what's going on with it?
Well, as of right now, in the last couple of days, the 10-year treasury is like on a decline, a slight decline. But if I showed you the chart from like 2020, it was like down at almost zero. Like now it's at like almost 4.5. See, that's right here. See at that very bottom of that dip
Yeah.
in 2020,
2020.
and then
Yep.
now we're like really high up. So yes, it's coming down a little bit right now in the last we've been on a downward trajectory since like May. Like slight down. Like I'm talking like 4.6 to 4.2. So as
But
that
where do
number
you
goes
feel like the
down,
market is
the
right now,
return on
though?
rate is lower. So people are not putting their money into those. They're putting their money into the like the treasury bills and whatnot in the stock, not the treasury bill, the bonds because they're paying more. So
Oh,
if that value is low, the bonds will be better, and that's when rates start to go down.
do we need rates to go down? Do you feel?
For real estate,
Yeah.
I mean, like I've always said, is that there's like a ceiling and a floor of real estate. So even in bad markets, the lowest amount of sales is 4 million units sold. In the highest peak market, you're like 7.2, which was like 2021. When the market in 2010, we're talking about 4 million. So like those are life event sales. Like those are just higher quality clients. So will the clientele double in great rates? Yes, the clientele will double.
Hmm.
So I think if you're a good agent, whether the market, like, will you see a shift in your business? Probably, but you also see a lot of agents leave. And what I would love to see is like the balance of inventory shifted amongst agents through a declining market. Like, how does that, like, how many of those how many of those like bottom feeder deals go to like one deal agents, Like there was a statistics the other day, dude. I was like shocked. I think I wrote it down talking about how many agents actually do business right now. And let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
Uh, oh yeah. So it said in the last 12 months, 750,000 agents have done 0 to 1 deal. 750,000. That's a little bit less. That's more than half of the licensed NAR agents. 197,000 agents did 5 to 44 deals. And then 5,238 agents did 45 plus deals. So very, very few amount of agents do a bulk majority of the business, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at 750,000 doing 0 to 1, and you're seeing like NAR, because you're seeing all these news lines of NAR losing members at this alarming rate, and it's because of the lawsuit and this and that. It's like, dude, you guys, this is like the perfect storm for real estate agents to quit. One, you have this unknown with the NAR lawsuit. Two, you have sales really low, inventory is really low. Like this is just a tough market all around.
Yeah. It
If
seems
you were
that
calling real estate a war, like this is the war. Like this is the worst that it can get, in my opinion.
because of all those factors. Like,
Oh yeah, you
does
have everything
just
going
one
against
have to
you.
get like, does just one have to give? Like the
Oh
NAR
yeah.
settlement ends up not being as bad as we thought, or does that
I
not
don't think
really
that's gonna
help?
fix it.
You
The only
think
thing
it'll
that's gonna fix it is the rates.
rates?
Rates, yep.
Because is that the only thing that like relieves the pressure from sellers and they'll finally put their house on the market? Is that kind of what the issue is?
I think it's more just buyers buying. Like the rates, like this is it's so
But then
hard to
don't the
explain.
fucking prices just skyrocket and then we're in a
Yes, but
predicament?
people can people can afford more because
Yeah.
your buying power gets significantly greater. This is like I've built these documents, these spreadsheets, and it shows you can buy a house at say 3%. Say you have a house that's 500,000 bucks at 6%, 500,000 at 6%. You can buy that same house at 700,000 at 3%. And in 10 years, taking the exact same house, in 10 years, based on appreciation, because your rate is lower,
Mhm.
3%, you will have way more equity into that house than you will at the 500,000 at 6%. It is crazy to see. It's like an extra $100,000 in equity to see. So like when people like trying to tell a first time home buyer that, they're like, screw this, screw that, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, just that's why you need the spreadsheets like Addy has. It is insane when you see those statistics side by side.
Would you?
So
Yeah.
what's that?
Would Would you ever pay interest only? I'm just super curious.
Oh, I mean, I do all the time on the flips.
Right, but like on your primary residence, knowing that it's probably going to go up in the next 5, 10 years, this one you're probably going to be in.
Oh, I have lots of friends that do.
I know
Uh at low rates, yeah.
at low. Yeah,
If it's a 10, maybe a 10 year, not a 5 year.
yeah. Well, again, I think I get more value out of this. This is why we started. Personal question, and I don't know what it's like in obviously in Idaho or these other, but I'm currently living in Texas, and not only are property taxes eating me up, which they've kind of negated as of lately and helped us with bigger homestead exemptions and stuff like that, but insurance is a real issue, dude. I bought my house. Coming up on year two. So like when I got it in August of, I guess that would be 22, it was
Mhm.
$4,900 for the year.
Oh yeah.
The following August, 7,600. I just got my re-up quote that goes this August, like $10,000. 5 grand a year in 2 years. And now there's a lot of talks of like the Floridas, the Texas, like
Do you know
these
why that's
insurance
happened?
companies just dropping out.
Do you know why?
Yeah, I just went through a fucking hurricane.
Yeah, and then what's going on right now with the economy? Inflation. Guess
Inflation.
what? The cost of goods go up. So guess what? When your house gets knocked out in a hurricane, they got to rebuild that house with the price of goods that just went through the roof. And this is exactly what's happening in California with the fires. Dude, I watched this thing on the insurance industry the other day, and I was so blown away. They're like, Gavin Newsom has literally destroyed California with this whole insurance situation. State Farm just told them they're going to pull out if they like don't adjust these budgets and whatnot. It is absolutely wild to see this.
What's dude? What is the? There is no
Rachel's grandpa
answer.
got
But
canceled because he lived more than like 20 minutes away from a fire station, and then his freaking shop burnt down and it burnt half of his house.
I mean, what's the answer to that? And if they start pulling out of these big insurance companies, actually, I don't know if they would, but pull out of Texas and Florida, dude, that's like the biggest home selling going on right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is like why having okay, this is like obviously like more political charged show today because of like everything that happened. But
I
if
know,
you
and you're
think about,
smirking, so the podcasters can't see this, but it's getting you going. I love it.
but the thing is like
Give it to me.
the government officials, dude, are supposed to be public servants to do what's best for the people. but they do not do what's best for the people. Look at
Hmm.
everything that you're talking about.
Right.
And this is local stuff, dude. And it's crazy. It's freaking crazy. There's always a
Mhm.
cause and effect to everything. So you're like, what do they do? Well, I don't know about Texas and what you can do about the hurricanes. They'll tell you it's global warming, so you need to chill the earth out, which is laughable.
Yeah.
But in California, like we all know, like you worked in the timber industry. Did you work in the timber industry?
No, but
Okay, so we all know, like you can
I
go in there and
logged.
clear the forest and controlled burns and control
Yes.
clear cutting and things like that. Like this
Very
is what the
important.
government or the forestry services need to thrive.
Yep.
Rachel, my wife's um, dad, is the state director for Idaho Forestry. He's like, dude, we have more fires being caused from wildland forest fires,
Yep.
from like overgrowth than from anything else on the planet. We need to clear these areas. This is like burning people's houses because they want to protect a tree that is rotten that needs to be removed to let these other like, trees flourish and whatnot. And it's just insane.
You know who
So
was the
there's like,
best at that for centuries?
who?
The Native Americans.
Oh yeah.
That was actually one of their like annual rituals. They went and they just burned the hell out of everything. And so I'm very big into like history and the Native American and all that. And I was actually, like some of the national park, and then you think about California and the
Redwoods, yeah.
redwoods. Those big legendary trees are getting scorched every year, and it's because of all the feet and feet and feet of slash underneath them. And the Native
Hmm.
Americans, that's their old land. And they're like, guys, you need to burn, burn, burn. And they're finally right now allowing them to go in and start, but it's all government controlled, permitted, all this stuff. But yeah, they
Oh
need to
yeah.
light a fire
And
to
then they
it.
let you do like 2 inches at a time.
Right. Isn't that crazy? But then again, then it goes what we're talking about, home
Oh yeah, you're right.
insurance,
Oh yeah, the home insurance rates are crazy. No, I
because
think
everything's
insurance.
becoming so non-affordable, dude. Like you think about these people in just their $200,000 house here in Houston on their job that is not keeping up with inflation, and now their insurance doubled, their property tax doubled. Like that's where the major issues arise. And as a $500,000 house here is very cheap to somebody from California, that's super expensive to a lot of these local, unheard of expensive.
Yeah, well, Idaho is the least litigious state in America, and it's also, I think it's got the lowest housing taxes in America, or insurance in America as well. So when I was looking at the other day, I was looking at average the $600,000 range in property taxes on every house. It was literally between about 1,800 and $2,400 in taxes, and then the insurance is relatively cheap too. But the one thing I'm noticing around here a lot is tons of fires, house fires. Like one was across the street the other day. I got the drone in the air and flew it over there. It was really sad. It caught the neighbor's house on fire. The family ended up being from our kid's school. And what they're saying here that's causing the fires, over 50% of them is people leaving their batteries on the chargers,
Mm.
which is insane. And then so Rachel and she was like, you better don't be leaving any of those bike chargers on the batteries and whatnot. So I was looking at all of the tools I have. They're all Ryobi. So Ryobi actually has a disconnect in there if it feels that like the battery's getting too hot and whatnot. But
That's
it's,
good
I
to
mean,
know because I'm always charging batteries. I got like 7 kits.
yeah, it said do not leave them connected to the charger or the power tool.
Charge them
And
up
dude,
and pull them.
it's happening all the time because I think we're hitting like the 100, we've been hitting 110.
Yeah, you guys have been smoking.
That's what happened to Rachel's grandpa. The
Yep.
battery caught on fire.
Battery. I'm pulling all mine. Quick pivot. We talked about it. Fair housing MLS violation.
Oh yeah.
The hell happened?
Well, I mean,
Breaking
I get
laws,
warnings
dog?
I get, huh?
You breaking laws, dog?
Well, I get warnings all the time. And we actually sold
You
oh yeah,
renegade.
dude. Well, it's like the tax log says some different square footage than the floor plan scan, and then the appraiser says it's something different. So anyways, long story short, I get like one day I get like 15 violation notices. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And so I go and I start clicking on the imagery, and like three of them were for my flip in Sherwood. And then I go to this other listing, and it's like these are, well, some of them are old listings. And I'm starting to look at all of them, and they're all like pictures of businesses in the pictures. So it said violation of imagery used, or this is like a warning. So I called the MLS and I said, hey, I have all these warnings. can you tell me like what's going on here? And then so they're like, tell me like whatever number of the warning is or the violation number. So I tell them, they pull it up and they're like, well, you can't have pictures of businesses in your listing. And I'm like, well, one of these is a condo that has a coffee shop in the basement, like at the entryway. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? They're like, you need to blur it out. And I said, what is the violation? And they're like, well, it might be a HUD violation. And I said, "Oh," and I'm like, what do you mean might be? Like, tell me what might be. Like, everything might be something. And then they said, well, it could be a fair housing violation because it could be telling what type of people might live in that neighborhood. And I said,
Coffee
you
drinkers?
tell me, I go, can you tell me based on this picture what type of people might live in this neighborhood? I said, because I don't know. I said, I'm from Portland and it's the most diverse, like one of the most diverse cities in America. Like this is mind boggling. And then she's like, well, it could be a fair housing violation. So then I got so angry, dude. I
I
like called the
bet.
attorney and I'm like, how can this be a fair housing violation? And he's like, the only way it can be a fair housing violation is if the business is discriminating against a protected class. If the business is not discriminating against a protected class, there's no violations. And this is like what pisses me off so bad in our industry is you get,
Wait, is
and
this
so
a
the,
person that turned you in, or is the MLS
no, this is the
scouring?
MLS. They must have a scrubbing tool now, like through AI that goes through and checks. Because I started seeing in the masters group that like all these people are like, "Oh, I'm getting pinned left and right for these imagery pictures from these businesses." So then,
Fucking agents are
um,
getting squeezed lately, dog.
oh, dude, it's crazy. So then I called the, so then I called the, this is like, so going back, like we had another agent that worked with us in Nashville or in Tennessee, not Nashville, that had been turned in by another agent to our broker, and this has happened in multiple states even in Washington. And they said that the agent did a video and said like it was like the five best neighborhoods with views in the city. Well, they said that he was breaking a violation because he was discriminating against a protected class. And then so then the broker contacted the agent. Well, in every MLS, Redfin, Zillow, and all of them, they all have like a little thing that says like what type of views this property has, right? So where it's
Right.
territorial, city views, all the things. So I went to the broker, and the broker from our own brokerage told him he needed to remove the video. And that really pissed me off. So then I go to the broker and I talk to her and I say, why did they need to remove the video? And she said, because you could be discriminating. I said, the only way he is discriminating is if he refuses to show those properties to somebody that is of a protected class. If you're saying, I said, well, who do you think he's discriminating against? She's like, well, people that are blind, you know, like they can't see those views. I said, you're discriminating. You're the one making that assumption. If someone that's blind calls this agent, do you think he's going to refuse to show them a house with a view because they're blind? I go, you're freaking crazy. I go,
Mm-hmm.
this is the problem. This is the problem. And she was just like so mind blown. And I said, look, here's our app for our brokerage. And it even says right on here, views. I said, so you're telling me that our brokerage is in violation? And then this broker in Washington did the exact same thing. And I'm like, these people are so stupid, dude. There was this lawsuit of this guy, this lender. It's the Chicago podcast. It's a lending podcast. And he was like basically talking about, he said on his podcast, he said, if you have like a below 500 credit score, like basically you're not buying a house. Somebody turned him in, dude. This thing went to the Supreme Court. And they said that he was breaking fair housing violations because he wouldn't work with people with under a 500 credit score. Dude, he like brought up his, because he was doing the podcast to generate leads, he brought up this freaking his list of all of the inquiries of everyone that contacted him to do a loan, dude. And it was like 50,000 like like loans. He's like, I have never once refused to work with anyone with under 500 credit. He's
Yep.
like, this is insane. This is the exact same thing that I'm talking about.
What do they gain out of fighting that?
Nothing, dude. It's nothing. It's they don't want to hurt people's feelings. That's the problem. We've gone to this whole vanilla world where if you have a negative reaction to anything, you naturally like don't. They're trying to avoid creating any problems. But that's what I'm saying. These aren't even problems to begin with.
You know what's funny about this, dude? And like, I get it. I get having some of these rules, and I'm not saying get rid of them at all. Like, don't be an idiot. But the funniest part is when we've got channels everywhere, but I talk to Joe a lot, and we're in Houston, and you talk about diversity. Like,
Yep.
you got diversity. Guess what? Like 99% of the clients do when they call Joe, and I'm just speaking out loud. I'm just saying like an African American family will call him like, "Yo, Joe, is there a bunch of other black people that live in this neighborhood? Because we want to make sure." That's the first question they ask. You know what I mean? Joe is always like, he is very by the book, and so he doesn't, I'm not allowed to talk like that and this and that. But dude, it's what they like. They're all asking the questions they want to know. We're not steering in any way, and like you said, all of this information is public. We get it all from Redfin, from niche.com. They can do it all day long,
Mhm.
but they want to slap the hammer down on, one agent. I just feel like they got bigger fish to fry than you put a coffee business in your MLS listing. So, do they make you remove it, shut you down? What does it negatively affect you in any
No, dude, they
way?
didn't do shit. They didn't
Yeah,
do anything. I literally told them that they're crazy. They told me to write a response on the violation forms. I literally copy and pasted the same response to every single one of them. And I said, you guys are insane. I am not removing these pictures.
right.
And then I put a post out there and I just said, I hope that everyone else stands firm on this. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. They're trying to create, they're in a world of transparency. They're trying to get you to remove pictures from it's like, dude, okay, let's play peekaboo. Let's put a blur on that business that's in the base of the freaking building and let them guess what it is.
That might be a good thumbnail.
What
You might get more clicks.
I'll be honest with you, like at where I used to live at the Encore building, they had a coffee shop called Ovations. Well, I used to work in the beverage industry, so there was a catering company that served the Rose Garden, which is where the Blazers played, called Ovations. So I literally thought that coffee shop was like their like catering headquarters. So I'm
Dude,
like, it's mind blowing, dude.
yeah, those turn-ins, to the MLS and all that, man, it's crazy sometimes.
Dude, just so everyone's listening to this, and this is like what you're saying, like African Americans call Joe and they're like, I want to live in this neighborhood.
Right.
A fair housing violation would be as if you got a client that is from a like a protected class and you don't show them the same houses that you would show someone else, regardless. So if they tell you like, hey, this is the area I want to live in, it's your job as a real estate agent to show them the areas they want to live in. It's like taking out someone that's 55 plus and they're like, I only want to see 55 plus communities.
Right.
That's their request. You're allowed to do that. Like you're fulfilling what they want. So like all these agents, and this is what happens is everyone gets so like in this world of like tiptoeing around and being like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. It's like this is it's
That's
mind
such a
blowing,
good
dude.
point. You just look at that person and go, if so and so person called you right now, would you show them a $700,000 house? Well, yeah. Well, then
Exactly.
you're not protecting them.
Exactly.
That's a great point. And
And that's like what happened up in New York, New Jersey, like 2 years ago, is that they ran like a sting operation, and so they would call in with like a Hispanic dude and say like I want to see how I'm pre-approved for $500,000, and then they sent in a white guy pre-approved at 500,000, and they were seeing if they were sending these buyers to the same houses, and
dude,
they
trying to
weren't.
trap them, that's some bullshit.
They got busted, dude. They weren't doing that.
Wow.
That's like why you should have a pre-lit like an onboarding process to find out exactly what your clientele is looking for, and
Mm-hmm.
not just pre-assume like what people are looking for. So that's
What
why I go back to the whole thing with like view homes. Am I ever, dude? It's so crazy. Your job is to find people homes based on what they're looking for. That's my whole point.
dream home?
Yeah, exactly. I've never once in my wildest, dude, when I lived in the building at the condos, dude, there was two people in my building that were blind and
Yeah.
they both had view condos.
Yeah.
Never in my wildest imagination would I
Would you
ever think that somebody that can't see would not want to live in a house with beautiful views. It's never crossed my mind. I'm like,
that is crazy.
if you're entertaining, dude, do you want your views that you want your guests to have a great experience? Like, do you just love the environment? Do you love the walkability? Like that's what I'm saying. There's so
Your
much more to
significant
it.
other likes it, whatever it may be. Yeah. But they bought
Yep.
those and somebody had to show them those.
Yep. Exactly, dude.
That NAR settlement you says fixes it. Why did you say that?
What do you mean?
You said the NAR settlement fixes like helps with real estate going forward.
When did I say that?
Earlier on in the podcast, you were like, I think the NAR settlement's going to help. And maybe I can't remember the context, but it
Well, no, I was saying the only thing that would fix the situation was the rates.
rates.
Yeah.
When is
Oh,
this?
I was
Isn't this
saying
a
that
NAR
I was just
settlement
saying that
coming
there was
next month?
three. I was saying there's multiple things that were impacting the real estate industry right now,
Right.
and that was the NAR settlement, inventory level, and rates. And I know the way it will help is like it coming to a headwind being implemented and then us moving forward to figure out how we're going to navigate these waters. Because
Right.
interestingly, like I just saw on Sky Slope, they added a retainer fee to like one of the pay elements. So actually someone told me the other day, they're like, I'm going to start charging a if people are paying cash, I'm going to start charging a retainer fee for cash buyers because we all know like cash buyers waste a lot of time because they're not going through a pre-approval process. They're a lot of people will come to your town for the weekend. They're like, "Oh, I'm a cash buyer. I'm just looking at some real estate. Can you show me some homes?" So when I was talking to this agent, they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to start charging a $500 cash retainer for cash buyers because they're like, it's not enough to like really, make them think twice, but it's also like enough to like get their, find out if they're serious or not."
Yeah, and that is hard for most agents to do because they don't want to deter that person.
Mm-hmm.
You're anti that. You're like, no, that
Oh yeah, I
person's
used to
just
do
here
it
to
all the
waste your
time.
time. And if you don't get the 500, they are never going to be buyers. But
Well, we used to do it for
agents, we just
400.
you just read the stats. How many agents are doing one deal a year? They'll do anything for that one deal.
Oh yeah, dude. Dude, I'm just like laughing because if you talk to like struggling agents right now,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you do? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, well, I see just the dumbest stuff that they're doing. I'm like, if I am a struggling agent and I'm not doing deals and I'm trying to figure this out, or even if I'm a brand new agent getting into the game and trying to figure this out, am I going to go listen to the person that does no deals? Or am I going to go and listen to the people like with technology and YouTube and all the things? There's so much accessibility to getting information and figuring this thing out. I talk to agents all the time and they're like, yeah, I just don't do open houses anymore because there's no buyers to be had and this and that. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, do you know how many of our deals are coming right now? Like in general, not our deals, but in general, like I'm hearing people saying like, oh, my open house sold this house. It's because people are all just kind of browsing around. It's how I bought this house. I
Hmm.
just saw the open house. I popped in, boom, it was the right fit.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing that all the time now. It's like, oh, the buyer came from the open house. The buyer came from the open house. A open house buyer is the same as a for sale by owner seller. They have a sign out in the front of the yard that says for sale by owner. That's a great lead. An open house buyer is somebody that is actively shopping for homes without their agent. They could say that they have an agent, but I think in the new world of that we're moving into is you're going to start seeing agents go into open houses with their buyers because they're going to get so fearful. Like this is going to open up a big spectrum
That,
of
yeah.
protection.
But that makes me think like, so when you say that, our clients, I mean, clients have always gone to open houses without agents. And then when they walk in, typically they have that like, don't talk to me look. But is it happening even more so now with the NAR? So like more and more clients are going unrepresented and just peeking.
Do I feel that buyers now are going more unrepresented?
Yeah.
I think it's the same as it's always been. I
Yeah.
think with the interest rates being higher, I think so. When you read the stats of hearing, there's 80,000 buyers on the sidelines waiting right now for the rates to change, or 80
80,000.
million, 80 million.
Yeah.
And then we're selling 4 million houses a year. There's 20x more buyers out there than there's home sales right now. Dude, people, if you're telling me that there's not an opportunity, you're freaking blind. These people are driving around. Oh, open house, boom, they pop in. Open house, boom, they pop in. Anyone that says that they're just looking, they have motivation. They're not just looking, trust me. Unless they're just like truly a neighbor, but they're interested for a reason. It is probably because they're interested in selling their house at some point.
And I always go to like the marketing aspect, like what does the client or the viewer actually want to hear? And I'm like, maybe you do a campaign as of like basically drilling this NAR settlement into your sphere's mind with Facebook, like being very transparent and open about what it is.
Well, that's actually when I
Instead of
was
hiding and waiting for the date to happen and then being reactive, you're being proactive. You're the one agent talking about it all day, every day.
Hey Jackson, I'm a real estate agent and I'd love to work with you. What's up, Jed?
I know. Home
So like
Alone.
I'm going out to look for homes.
Yep.
So you're talking to me and maybe you know three agents. And I'm like, dude, awesome. Like what's your game plan? Like how do you like to buy houses. And you're like telling them, oh, I'd like to buy this. I'd like to buy that. Da, da, da. Okay. Do you love to hit open houses? Yeah. Has an agent ever gone with you to an open house? No, I just always go on my own. Oh,
Right.
why is that? Well, the agent just never even asked to go. Well, how would you feel if I went with you? Like, I guarantee you, every single buyer is gonna be like mind blown that any agent ever says that. Well, that's what you're gonna start seeing more and more because I hosted thousands of open houses, and sometimes agents do pop up. When the market was slow, I saw agents all the time. When the agents is ripping, zero agents.
Right.
It's because they're literally just sending their clients like freaking herds of animals out there because they know that their buyer's gonna call them back, write the best offer possible. Well, when the
Yeah.
market's slow, guess what happens? Buyer tells the listing agent, "Hey, my can you write this offer up for me? I really want this house at the best deal."
And then I think you talked about this in another episode, but most of buyers' initial reaction is say, "Nope, I'm already working with an agent."
Yeah, they all say that.
Yeah. So then what did you always do after that?
Oh, well then, oh, I said, great. Can I get their information? I'd love to contact them and let them know you came through.
And then what are the ones who don't have an agent do? Do they kind of look at you like, "Oh shit"?
They're like, oh, let me get their number. Let me look and see. And then they're looking to their phone. They're like, oh, I can't find it.
And then what do you say?
I say, great. Um, Let me shoot you a quick text message. And that way, when you do find it, you can send it over to me. And then in the interim, I'm just going to pretend like I never heard that and keep hitting them like I'm working with them.
You're a killer.
Dude, they don't have an
They used to
agent.
tell me I got an agent. I'm like, perfect. Have a great day.
You know how many agents now I hear like say like, oh, all the time they're like, oh, my everyone has an agent. Everyone has an agent. And I'm like, dude, that's just the easiest way to get you off
Yeah.
of them, man.
Yep.
You got to change the conversation.
Yep.
And that's what happens with a lot of these agents, is they're not working on it. And, the other day I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about how to have the conversations with about NAR and commissions moving forward. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, this is exactly what people need to be doing. And they actually gave a good analogy. They said, if you went to a surgeon and he was like, they're like, and you talk to the surgeon and you said, hey, do you ever practice performing surgeries? They're like, yeah, I got to have 10,000 hours before I ever practice my first surgery, like as a resident.
Right.
Awesome. Now you go to a real estate agent, you're like, how many times did you practice cold calling or how many listing appointments did you practice before you went on your first appointment? They're going to say zero. And even right now, we're in this like this good gap of this whole NAR situation. And I guarantee you 99% of the agents out there aren't practicing conversations. And like I was just talking to someone yesterday, they're like, well, I don't know how to practice. I said, it's very simple. Pre-record these questions that you would ask, that you would be expecting a seller to ask you, put them on a recorder on a YouTube video and just hit play the question and then just answer back, like talk to yourself on video. It's really simple. You can record it and rewatch it back. It's sometimes some of the hardest things, but back when I was like in just learning sales, that was like one of the things that they used to do. And this company I work for is they would record us in front of everyone, dude. It was so hard. And
Oh,
then they would record it and then they'd give it to you back on a flash drive. And then you had to go back and watch it. And then you were like, oh man, I suck.
yeah. But that made you want to do it better. That's funny. You know what podcast we're gonna do next?
What's
Because
up?
I totally forgot. And I think I talked about it. I have it here and I'm not gonna show it to you. So you have to actually answer them. But I asked ChatGPT, I was asking what the top 10 objections are.
Oh yeah, let's do it, dude.
Oh, I know. You're gonna rip. We'll do that on the next one because I think when I personally think of 87% of agents fail, let's say 90%, and then out of that 10% that's there, 3% of people or agents are probably doing the majority, 90 plus percent of the transactions. Like you get 95% of the real estate world that really struggles or is like just barely getting by. And me, like being around you long enough, fortunately, I found a way that I can actually get people to reach out, but even with that, having the tough conversations is why 95% of people fail. I think not being able to be direct with buyers and sellers is the number one killer. So when I've been around you and these other agents that I referenced, they're just like so good at immediately nipping any kind of objection in the butt and being so direct that you almost feel like like wow, that was like that surpassed any kind of expectation that I could have had. Like now like the ball's in your court so much.
Mm-hmm.
And you sent me that listing agent over here and we were kind of talking about negotiate and they like kind of commission stuff. Not like I was fighting them on it, my situation, anyways. And they're very good. Basically, like, go ahead and use other people, but we're the best. And you kind of turn my mindset all now turns into like, oh, I don't want to lose these guys,
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that's what your clients end up doing is like, oh, I don't want to let this guy go.
Well, the one thing, man, the one tough like thing I struggle with the most is when people call us and they're like, "Oh, I want to use you because you have this massive following."
Yep.
And then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it's not my following that's going to sell this house.
Yeah.
And then that's a tough thing because then they're like, "Oh, I chose you out of all these other agents." And I'm like, "Well, is that like what do you think I was going to put your house on my YouTube channel where I have no houses listed?"
Right.
Like it kind of comes into this thing. But then they're like, "Oh, you're really good at marketing and this and that." Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I understand that." But then they sometimes have really high and unrealistic expectations,
Yep.
you know. And
Big time.
so listening to the
And I think that's the other aspect of objections, and I'm going to write this down so I don't forget, is basically combating um real unrealistic.
well, the good thing about the NAR thing, and the one thing I really enjoyed hearing was, they were talking about how if you were to interview Warren Buffett and all these people, like how they grew these companies really fast, or like not even fast, but just like very successfully. They all said the same thing. It was products mixed with great incentives.
Mm,
And so when you talk about sales, the number one incentive in sales is financial rewards.
right.
It's our commissions. So now you're telling me as a home seller trying to get top dollar for your house, you're going to remove those incentives?
Mm, fire.
You're going the opposite direction here. So you always have
That
to go
is.
back to like what people's motivation is. Is it paying me the least amount of money, selling your house for the highest price, or netting the most money? If you don't say
Ooh,
netting the most money, you're the biggest idiot on the planet, and you're probably not someone I want to work with.
dude, you're out of this world, man.
So it's like my
That
favorite.
was if everybody just uses that to
Oh
open
yeah.
up their listing presentation, you can thank Jesse later because
Well, that's like that old saying when you say like, pick two things because you're gonna get two out of these three things when you work with me. Do you want it done fast, good, or cheap?
right.
Because if you want it done fast and good, it's not going to be cheap. If you want it cheap, it's not going to be good or fast, right? Like, so
Right.
there's like the whole play this
Yep.
game.
That's
So it's
right.
like always redirecting the conversation back to someone's motivation. And when you give somebody that open ended question of what one do you want out of these three things, every time they ask a question, all you have to do is give them the question back with, remember, your motivation is getting the most net for your house. So
Yeah.
if we remove the number one driver of everyone, which is incentive and money, you're going to kill yourself.
Yep.
So that's what I always say is when I see these listings and it's like a 1% buyer's agent comp,
Yeah.
buyers never go and see those houses. And it isn't because we're not showing it to them, it's because the marketing sucks. A seller has a
Fair
cheap
housing.
mentality.
Fair housing.
Oh yeah. It's because they have a cheap mentality, dude. They're gonna get the cheapest listing agent. They're gonna get the worst pictures, and they probably have freaking a 2-year-old writing up
Yep.
their listing profile.
Yep.
It's funny, like I love that guy on Instagram, Steven the realtor, hey realtor, can you hear me? Whatever.
Yeah.
And he like does the whole thing where he goes on the interview and the guy's like, I'll do it. I have an agent doing it for 1%. He's like, I'll do it for 0.5% or whatever. And the guy's like, really? Both sides? Oh yeah, say no more. So then he like brings out his flip phone and he's in there out there taking pictures. He's got
Yep.
his little chalkboard in front of the house. He's writing the like for sale. And then now there's the buyer ones where they like show like the buyer's agent's like, hey, I'll do it for $500. And he's like, all right. So he like says, he's like, the agent's like, where's your card to the buyer? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, $500. He like gets in, he drives the house, he like throws him his phone. He's like, here you go. Enjoy showing yourself the house. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, remember, $500.
Oh man.
And then then the guy's like, I really like the house. He's like, can you write me an offer? He's like, yep, here's my laptop. And the guy's like, you're not going to write the offer. He's like, $500.
$500, baby. Cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Yeah, you're gonna have to stand out, and then people are gonna be getting 6%, 7, 8% commissions on these who are just kick ass, and then everybody's gonna be like, God, how are they doing that? Well, there's a reason for it. And we'll do that on the next podcast, homies.
Let's
So
go.
as always, reach out info@jacksonwilkie.com. We actually just had another couple reach out. We have to take a meeting right after this, Jesse, from
Yeah, I got one on Instagram right here too.
They're joining us at EXP. So if you guys want to learn about that, where we coach you for free, all of our training, and then you basically get me, the marketing side, and you get Jesse blowing up your business. Don't be one of those 90% failure rates. We can help, and we love helping.
And
So
and one thing that can really help us out that is free is just by hitting the like button
that's true.
or subscribing, whatever.
And on the podcast, you guys leave us reviews. Let us know what the new podcast is doing for you if you love it. So into the net, and then questions for the podcast too, info@jacksonwilkie.com. It's all down in the show notes. So until the next one, homies, we'll catch you later.
See ya.